Tragic life. That's what some might say about Bryan Trottier, but they'd be wrong. Sure, this hockey legend faced pain and rejection, but his story is really about strength, success, and finding peace. Bryan Trottier is almost 70 now, and his journey from a small-town kid to NHL champion is worth telling. Bryan was born with two worlds inside him. His father was Cree Métis, his mother was Irish. Growing up in Val Marie, Saskatchewan, he learned early that being different meant facing hard times. Kids called him names. They said cruel things about his heritage. But his parents taught him something powerful. They said those mean words weren't really about race. They were about jealousy. Other kids wanted to bring him down because he was good at hockey. This lesson shaped everything. Bryan learned to see hate as fear. He built thick skin. Years later, he would say he never felt it was racism. He thought it was just people trying to get under his skin. His parents gave him a gift. They helped him focus on hockey instead of hurt. In 1975, Bryan joined the New York Islanders. He was just 23 years old, but he played like a veteran. His first year, he won the Calder Trophy as the best rookie. The next few years were magic. From 1977 to 1982, he scored over 100 points every single season, 5 years in a row. That's incredible. Bryan wasn't just a scorer. He was the complete package. He played defense, he won face-offs, he led by example. The Islanders had never won anything before he arrived, but with Bryan as their leader, everything changed. In 1979, he won both the Hart Trophy as league MVP and the Art Ross Trophy as the top scorer. He was the best player in hockey. Then came the dynasty years. From 1980 to 1983, the Islanders won 4 straight Stanley Cups, 4 championships in a row. It had never been done before in the modern era. Bryan was the heart of that team. In 1980, he won the Conn Smythe Trophy as playoff MVP for their first Cup win. He was 28 years old and on top of the world. But here's what made those Islanders special. It wasn't just Bryan. Mike Bossy could score like no one else. Dennis Potvin was a superstar on defense. Billy Smith was a wall in goal. Butch Goring was clutch in big moments. Each year, a different player won the playoff MVP award. This showed how deep and balanced they were. But it also meant no single player got all the attention. By the time Bryan retired from the Islanders in 1990, he owned every major team record. Most games played with 1,123. Most points with 1,353. Most goals with 500. Most assists with 853. He was their franchise player, their captain, their leader for 15 seasons. But then something strange happened. The Islanders wanted to retire his number 19. This is the biggest honor a team can give. Your jersey hangs in the rafters forever. Most players dream of this moment, but Bryan said no. Year after year, he turned them down, even when they offered him big money to show up. His teammates were confused and hurt. Bob Nystrom, whose own number was retired in 1995, couldn't understand it. Bob said he was half the player Bryan was, yet Bryan wouldn't accept this honor. Butch Goring and other former teammates felt the same way. They knew something was wrong, but Bryan wouldn't explain. The problem went back to 1990, Bryan's last year with the team. He was 33 and slowing down. His points dropped from 82 in 1988 to just 24 in 1990. General manager Bill Torrey made a business decision. He bought out Bryan's contract. The team wanted to give younger players like Pat LaFontaine and Brent Sutter more ice time. For Bryan, this felt like betrayal. He had given everything to the Islanders. 4 Stanley Cups, 15 years of his life, all those records. And when he got older, they just threw him away. The contract buyout wasn't meant to be cruel, but it cut deep. Bryan felt his loyalty wasn't returned. So when the Islanders wanted to celebrate him, Bryan wasn't ready. The wound was too fresh, the hurt too real. He couldn't pretend everything was fine. Refusing the jersey retirement was his way of showing that pain. It wasn't about money or ego. It was about respect and feeling abandoned. For years, this standoff continued. Fans didn't understand. The media criticized Bryan. By early 2001, the Islanders seemed ready to give up. They said they wouldn't pursue the ceremony anymore. It looked like Bryan's number would never officially be retired, but something changed behind closed doors. Maybe Bryan's heart softened. Maybe the team reached out differently. We don't know exactly what happened, but on October 20th, 2001, Bryan finally agreed. His number 19 was officially retired in a quiet ceremony. While this drama played out, hockey was changing around Bryan. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, he was setting records left and right. Fastest to 400 points, youngest to score 500 points. He held 14 different NHL records at various times. But then Wayne Gretzky arrived. The Great One broke every single one of Bryan's records. Not just broke them, but smashed them. Where Bryan reached 700 points in 506 games, Gretzky did it in 317. Where Bryan was the youngest to 500 points at 23 years old, Gretzky was just 21st. Even Bryan's teammate Mike Bossy was breaking his records. Bossy scored goals like a machine, 9 straight seasons with 50 or more goals. This wasn't Bryan's fault. He was still great, but Gretzky was like nothing hockey had ever seen. When you play in the same era as the greatest player ever, everyone else gets overshadowed. Bryan understood this. He never complained about losing records. He just played his game. The media situation made it worse. The Islanders played between two famous dynasties. The Montreal Canadiens dominated the 1970s. The Edmonton Oilers ruled the mid-1980s. Both were Canadian teams with huge media coverage. The Islanders, despite winning 4 straight cups, were stuck in the middle. They got less attention because they weren't in a major Canadian market. This affected all the Islander players, including Bryan. Great players from big markets get more recognition. That's just how it works. Bryan was as good as anyone, but he played in the shadow of Gretzky's individual brilliance and the media's focus on Canadian teams. Through all this, Bryan never lost his connection to his roots. He was proud of his Indigenous heritage. As one of the most successful Indigenous players in NHL history, he carried that responsibility with honor, but he also understood the complexity of representation. When he saw Indigenous logos on teams like the Chicago Blackhawks, he felt pride. He saw it as honoring his people's warrior spirit. Not everyone agrees with this view. Some Indigenous people find sports mascots offensive. Bryan respected that, but his personal feeling was different. He said there are many Indigenous people who share his pride in these symbols. They just don't always speak up about it. This shows Bryan's wisdom. He learned early that people see things differently. His experience with childhood racism taught him that perception matters. How you choose to interpret something affects how it impacts you. His parents' lesson about jealousy versus hate served him well throughout life. In recent years, Bryan has become more open about his story. He wrote a memoir called All Roads Home, A Life on and Off the Ice. At first, he was guarded about personal details, but as a grandfather, he wanted to share his experiences. He hopes his story can help young people, especially Indigenous youth, believe in themselves. Bryan is 68 years old now. He's no longer the angry young man who refused jersey ceremonies. Time has given him perspective. He understands that his 1990 departure, while painful, was just business. The hurt has healed. The anger has faded. He's also gained appreciation for how society has changed. When he was young, racist comments were more common and accepted. Today, people are more aware of how words can hurt. Bryan is glad about this progress. He knows that not everyone has thick skin like he developed. Protecting young people from hate is important. Looking back, Bryan's career was extraordinary. 4 Stanley Cups, Hall of Fame induction in 1997, every major Islanders record, individual trophies for Rookie of the Year, MVP, leading scorer, and playoff MVP. The King Clancy Trophy for leadership and humanitarian work. Few players achieve even one of these honors. But maybe his greatest achievement was personal growth. From a hurt kid facing racism, to a bitter veteran feeling abandoned, to a wise grandfather sharing his story. Bryan learned that success isn't just about trophies. It's about how you handle both triumph and defeat. Today, Bryan Trottier lives quietly. He's not chasing headlines or reliving past glory. He's focused on family, on sharing wisdom, and on being proud of his journey. The contract buyout that once caused so much pain is now just part of his story. The records that Gretzky broke are still part of hockey history. Bryan Trottier's life wasn't tragic at all. It was triumphant. He overcame racism, won championships, and found peace with his past. At almost 70, he's exactly where he should be. A champion who learned that the greatest victories happen off the ice, in the quiet moments when you forgive, grow, and inspire others to do the same.